Indeed, it's showtime. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of What's the Buzz. I'm Mad Dog DeCipio, joined as I am each and every night by Amelia the Pitbull Chapman. How are you, Amelia?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I am stoked and joked tonight, baby. We're going to have a good one. I got a literal and figurative heavyweight tonight. He is a that one, and I'll tell you where that came from. We have a guy who has made a really trailblazed himself a career unlike anybody else in Hollywood. He is probably the most unlikely guy you would think of as a child to make it in Hollywood. But let me tell you something. Bruce Vilanch defied all the odds. And man, did he make himself a name. And he is our guest tonight, Bruce Vilanch. Welcome to the show.
Absolutely.
Hello, you odds to fire me.
We're so honored to have you here.
It is indeed an honor to have you here. We right at the start of the show, a shout out to Mark Sotkin, producer, writer, director of television programs far and wide from the 70s to the current, for hooking us up with Bruce. We got to talk right off the bat, Bruce. We got to talk about summer camp. So you know Mark from summer camp. You were 6 years old, 7, something like that.
Oh, I guess that's when I first met him. Yeah, I guess we were at Camp Veritans, which was a day camp in North Jersey. It was actually on the estate of Garrett Augustus Hobart, who was vice president of the United States, and he would have been president. He was vice president under McKinley, would have been president when McKinley was shot, but he died before McKinley was shot. So it didn't happen, but there was a lot of money in the estate, and what's now William Patterson College was up there, and this camp that I guess my father and I guess Mark's dad were involved in setting up. It was like a Jewish service camp situation. Yeah. And it was a day camp, and we met there. But then we wound up going to school together when we went to a private school for a few years because everybody was running to private schools because you couldn't get into colleges coming out of Paterson, New Jersey. They something in the water in Paterson. Not get into college. You had to go to a private school to get into college. So and then we rendezvoused in Hollywood years later, and then post Hollywood. Years after that.
What, we are so grateful to have Mark Sotkin as a friend of the show. He's been with us probably 5 times now, 4 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a really great guy. And he's a friend outside the show as well. Let me tell everybody a little bit about you, Bruce. Bruce Vilanch was born a long time ago in a land far away called New York City. He is a writer, an actor, performance artist, and sometimes Christmas elf. And he is universally regarded as a writing genius and best known for the films You Don't Mess with the Zohan, The Ice Pirates, and writing his collaboration for the comic relief series, Comic Relief 5, along with Pauly Shore and Robert Townsend, among notable others. We'll get through that list in a minute. Louis Anderson. And he appeared also with his friend Billy Crystal on said program. He is witty, charming, dashingly handsome, and has one hell of a T-shirt collection, which you will see tonight. Join me as I welcome 2-time Emmy Award-winning writer, actor, and comedian Bruce Vilanch to the show. Bruce, welcome.
Wow.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. You left out the stripping part. I mean, I learned how to snatch a dollar bill off a table without using my hand. What can I tell you?
I love this man. Let's talk about your unlikely road into show business. Let's talk about this. Upon first inspection, and I read a little bit about your childhood. It's interesting that you chose show business. Why not following the family business?
Well, my father was a doctor, and the joke in the family was Bruce is never going to be a doctor. He has no patience. It was a funny family. And it's true. I was never going to, I was lousy in math, lousy in science. I was not going to go into that. At one point, they thought I'd be a lawyer because I like to perform. And they kept saying, you could be a trial lawyer and you could declaim like Perry Mason. I said, no, I'd rather have an audience. I'd rather have people paying and laughing. But they were very encouraging. I mean, from the time they realized I was happy making faces in the mirror and performing, at dinner and stuff like that. And my mother was a showgirl who had not really ever been a showgirl. She married a doctor, but she was starstruck and she loved show business. And my father loved showgirls, obviously. And so he liked musicals. He invested in them. So I grew up surrounded by it, and I loved they encouraged it because they saw it was making me happy. So I was a child actor for a little while, but I was never a child star. Or we'd be having this conversation in rehab. They don't do well, child stars, as a
Bruce,
rule.
one of my favorite movies is called Mr. Saturday Night. Billy Crystal's film.
Yes. Now on Broadway, it's a musical.
Yes, it is, and it's a hell of a show too. I encourage people to check it out. Let me ask you about that film. The story is a couple of brothers that grow up in the Jewish family, grow up speaking Yiddish to each other, and they take to performing in the living room for their relatives. How atypical is that of growing up in a Jewish family?
Well, depends on when Mark Saka and Billy Crystal and I were growing up, it was very typical because there was still Yiddish spoken somewhere, and any kid who could entertain was kind of encouraged to do that because it was funny, and because there were so many Jewish entertainers, and that was because obviously it was when Jews were not allowed in the professions, we found other things to do, like invent Hollywood and invent Broadway and vaudeville and all that.
That's a hell of a segue. And I'll tell you what, last night, in fact, I just saw the first time I've ever seen it, called When Jews Were Funny. Mm-hmm. And the likes of it was. Have you ever seen it?
No.
I will send it to you.
What Gentile made that?
Oh, no, it was actually a guy named Rosenstein that directed it.
A self-hating Jew.
It's Shelley Berman, Jack Carter, Mort Saul, oh my God, Shecky Green, all the Borscht Belt guys, and all members of the Friars Club.
Right.
It was a who's who of the Friars Club, for real. But it was an amazing film, and I was going to ask you about what is it about Jews that is just funny? Is it? And I'm not making light of it, but is it the oppressive nature growing up?
Sure.
Is it the family?
It's a classic view of from the outside, and it's Donald Pleasance wrote, I think, a play called The Man in the Glass Booth about Eichmann, and one of the lines in the play is one of the Israelis makes a joke, and Eichmann says, "Gallows humor, the hallmark of the Jew." And it's true. Gallows humor is you're going to get executed, and you find something funny about it, and that is exactly what Jews did with everything that happened that was oppressing us. We turned it around and made that something amusing. I mean, Hello, Springtime for Hitler is probably the most famous example of turning chicken shit into chicken salad. Yeah. So
I love.
I think it's also, but we come from a culture of it's a funny culture, and a lot of strange characters inhabit it. But that could also be said of Italians. It could be said of Black people. It could be said of a lot of different groups. But I think you don't see too many terribly funny WASPs, and that's because they were in power, so they didn't make fun.
Yeah, the whole thing was. Well,
although there are some very funny. I mean, Shelley Berman came up the same time as Bob Newhart, so there are funny WASPs. All those things are like crazy vast generalizations, but And if somebody writes something called "When Jews Were Funny," it means he doesn't think that they are anymore, or that the younger generation. So he already has a cross to bear, if that isn't a terribly Gentile thing to say about him.
I had the pleasure in my life of knowing Jackie Vernon. He was a great guy.
He was a great deadpan comic. He was hysterical.
Yeah. Oh my God, I loved him.
He was hilarious.
Used to sit around and just talk.
When I met Bette Midler, she was his opening act. 50 years ago.
I know.
Dedication.
Opening for Jackie? Wow.
He opened for Jackie to an audience of people who looked like Jackie. It was so strange. It was like a bus riders convention. It was even the women looked like him. It was so disheartening. And they really didn't get her. They were waiting for him. They really didn't get her, but she soldiered through. I thought she was hilarious, and there was a small coterie of people, which was hysterical.
Oh my God, I love that. Amelia,
yes,
jump in here, Amelia.
I was looking through that, and you know that you and I have a birthday just a day apart. Yeah, my birthday's on the 22nd of November.
Oh, well, you got Assassination Day.
Yes, I did. Unfortunately,
I was the day after Assassination Day, but you may have been born. No, you're younger than that. You were not around as
puppy.
I was in high school. But you're on the cusp. You could be a Scorpio woman, which is always dangerous.
I know.
I'm a Sagittarian, so. But I'm the first
dangerous
day.
Anyway, this shit. Ask some questions.
I was going to ask you, as far as like when you were a little kid, what was your favorite subjects in school? Even though you said you didn't really care for math or science.
It was English and history, because I got to read a lot, and I'm a reader, and most writers are readers, so those were my favorites. But anything that involved the other side of the brain, I was terrible at. Science, I was interested in science. I wasn't very good at it. Everything I would do would explode, no matter what. So, and I was terrible at math, but I was, I had all the Bachelor of Arts kind of leanings, English and history.
Did you ever take theater classes to where you had to talk like to an empty chair? Because I had to do that once.
Well, that was in college. We didn't have that. We didn't have any theater per se. We had speech, which was kind of like borderline theater, because you had to perform a little bit and do things like that. Although I don't remember ever having to talk to the chair. I watched Clint Eastwood do that many, many years later on a political broadcast. But we had a theater department. We did shows. I acted in a whole lot of shows. We had a woman named Grace George, who was not to be confused with the English actress, and she ran the theater, the whole theater part of the high school in Patterson, and we did great stuff. And it was it saved my life, because I got to actually perform for real people.
Oh, that's awesome! And I saw that you were also in Hairspray as well.
Well, that was many years later.
Years later as well.
It was it was a few hundred years later, basically.
I don't think that was that many years ago.
But that was always what I always wanted to do that. So it was kind of the realization of a dream, but it was a dream deferred, like a raven.
Well, let's talk about Hairspray for a second. You played Edna, right?
Yes, that was my favorite character out of the whole thing. I love Edna.
How much were you inspired by the performance of Divine to play Edna, or did you put your own spin on Edna?
Well, I was inspired by Divine, and I was inspired by Harvey Firestein, who created the musical version of it.
True. Okay.
But I did put my own spin on it. I mean, among other things, I got to rewrite part of it because Harvey had rewritten it. Harvey had written it. He hadn't written the show, but when he got into the show, they let him write things for him. And so a lot of this stuff was Harvey stuff, that had involved his book. I mean, he would say, "Oh, I'm like a pair of old nylons stretched out." Well, you can only do that if you want to imitate Harvey and that voice, which is inimitable. And I didn't want to do that, so I changed those lines so there was something better for Harvey. Me. And the funny part of it was that those rewrites stayed in the show once I did them. Because
beautiful.
Other people didn't want to imitate Harvey either. So,
yeah.
One of the things that you're known for is writing the Academy Awards. and you've won Emmys for the Academy Awards.
Yes.
Let's talk. I want to juxtapose the conversation a little bit in this regard. My background is professional wrestling, and we have something in wrestling called a work and a shoot. A work, you obviously know what a work is. It's when you're working the audience, and a shoot is straight up the truth, okay? It's what's happening at the moment. The Will Smith, Chris Rock situation.
Oh, yes.
In terms of professional wrestling, was that a work or a shoot?
Oh, that was a shoot. It was not a bit. It wasn't prepared.
I was going to ask you, can someone write that and get away with it? Or?
No. I was not involved with the show. I was involved peripherally in that I wrote for some people on the show, but I was not a writer on the show.
Right.
So I didn't get paid by the show.
Yeah.
However, I was watching it. I was actually in New York and I was watching it. And when it started, I thought, this is interesting. And then when it didn't go anywhere, I said, this is actually happening. This guy is having an anger management crisis, and he's acting it out in front of the world.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a bit because it had no out. There was no, there was no out. There was no tag. There was nothing that made it into a bit. It was just, it was real. In other words,
people in the wrestling, and the reason we're talking about this now, people in the wrestling business were betting money that was a work. Well, here's the thing, though. Where's the payoff? Where's the punchline?
Was a payoff.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my point. That if there would have been a payoff, it may not have been strong, but there would have been a payoff, and there was no payoff. And that's how you knew that it was not rehearsed, not a bit, nothing. Now the joke. I have a feeling that Chris just came up with that joke when he was looking at Jada and just kind of threw it in. I don't think anybody would have written that joke because it's common knowledge among people who pay attention to this kind of thing that she has alopecia and that's why she had a shaved head. And Chris says he didn't know that. And I'm sure if somebody had written that joke, somebody else would have said, we can't do that.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have gotten that far. So I have a strong suspicion that he came up with it on the spot. Or he came in with it and didn't tell anybody and just did it.
I was watching a bunch of folks sit around talking about that one, actually on a podcast.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, well, they're making, sensible arguments for both sides, but my enduring question was always, where's the bit? Where's the pay? And
I don't hear a sensible argument for it being a bit.
Yeah.
So
crazy. The other thing that you're known for is comic relief. Up on the screen right now are just a partial list of the writers of Comic Relief Fund. Louis Anderson, rest in peace. He passed away the same day my father died this year. Lost Louis and my father within 20 minutes of each other. Alan Bly, Jim Carrey, Bob Einstein, a brilliant guy. Buzz Cohan, Pauly Shore, Robert Townsend, and Bruce Vilanch. Talk to me about the mega power of a bunch of creative guys like this sitting around a room coming up with bits for comic relief. Is there here's the question then. Is it a collaborative effort, or is it the biggest ego wins?
Well, first of all, this is Comic Relief 5. We did 15 of them. And I never knew any of these guys were credited. And I don't know quite how that works because Buzz and I were the writers of the show. And everybody else came in with their own material. And some of them evidently got screen credit for it because they wanted to get paid, is the only thing I can figure.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
So, because I don't know what specifically would have been. We wrote Buzz tended to write, who's very funny, tended to write the serious pitches that non-comedians did, and I would do the stuff that the hosts would do, Whoopi, Billy, and Robin, and other things for other people as it went along. So it wasn't traditionally collaborative in there. It wasn't like Will and Grace, where a bunch of people sit around a table and have a first draft that they rewrite. This was, and it was all piecemeal coming in. Basically, it was me and Buzz doing all of the boilerplate for the show, and everybody else was throwing in their individual contributions. And as I say, we did 15 of them, so there were a lot of people.
How is it determined, Bruce, who writes?
You mean who was actually a writer on the show? They were hired by the producers, Pat Lee and John Moffat.
I don't know how that works. I often wondered about, whether it is like anything else, whether it's a political thing that, who that gets you in, or whether you've got some stroke with someone.
Well, the show came about because a lot of comedians who had all worked with each other in the past, and they had all worked with Pat and John, because Pat and John had a show called Fridays before Saturday Night Live, and it was a kind of competition almost, and they had not necessarily the news on HBO. So they worked with a lot of different comedians, and everybody got together under with a guy at Chris Albrecht was running HBO, and his college roommate Bob Zamuda came up with the idea of Tom Philly. And so everybody kind of was just called everybody else at the beginning and got involved in it. But it was all people who knew people, because we were all in that business. So
we recently lost Gilbert Gottfried, Bruce.
Yeah.
A guy who, in my opinion, I think he was the probably the most underrated comedian of our day. He was wildly funny beyond measure. A lot of people don't appreciate that, I don't think, because he's just the guy with the annoying voice, right?
Well, that was his character.
His impact.
Well, I don't know about his impact, but his character was that sort of whiny, aggravated, cranky Jewish guy who many of whom I grew up with, and it was, for my money, anything he said was funny, because he was just a funny guy, and he would immediately go to that. What do you think about that? And it was hilarious, and he was kind of no holds barred, but he was like genuinely funny. Listen, there was Sam Kinison, and there was Bobcat Goldthwait. They were all shouting comics. They came on at the top of their lungs and screamed about stuff. And Gilbert was like the third one in that trifecta. But
the hell of a trifecta.
He was very spare. He would come in with a line as opposed to like a whole attack. And I don't know, what the impact. Impact probably happened when he told the Aristocrats joke as on a roast, and it became an iconic thing. So much so that a documentary was made in which I appear. I would like to point out.
I know, I have it.
I am an aristocrat. About all these people telling the Aristocrats joke, and so that lived with him. And then, of course, he got into trouble with Aflac, which was a big income stream for him.
Yeah, big time.
Well, Bruce, he was one of the early cancellations.
Yeah,
he did it. He
sure was
a tsunami joke about Japan, and they freaked out.
Well, here's the thing. There were a couple of things I wanted to talk about that I'm sure you have opinions on. After 9/11 happened, he went on Comedy Central, was part of a roast, and he made a 9/11 joke. And someone from the audience shouted, "Too soon."
Oh, yeah, too soon.
Here's the question I have for you. Is it ever too soon, quote unquote, too soon to tell a joke? To try to make
probably. The old formula is comedy is tragedy plus time is comedy.
True.
So that would begat too soon.
Yeah.
And so I guess later on, and did anybody die? That's always a question. Did anybody die? Yeah. I used to occasionally when I perform, I tell a story about a Japanese woman farting in a store. It's a long, involved thing, but she's terribly dignified, and suddenly she farts, and that's part of the joke. And I said, really, when was the last time a Japanese woman farted in public? Hiroshima? And the audience would go, ooh, and I'll go, too soon? 1945. Too soon. So, and, I mean, it's just like it's a joke.
How did the aristocrats joke become so iconic, and why?
Well, I think I just mentioned it, how it became iconic. Gilbert started telling it, and as a result,
but is that all it took?
Was an inside joke that comics told each other, and because Gilbert did it on a roast on Comedy Central, it suddenly got into the zeitgeist, and it became iconic.
Iconic thing that people. It's almost like a badge of honor that people carry, that they're in on the Aristocrats show.
I was very flattered. We were doing Hollywood Squares, and the documentary team came and shot us and Penn and Teller, who were on the show at the same time on that show, and they came and they recorded all of us. I was very flattered. They did Whoopi as well, and I mean a whole bunch of people. I only have one line in the thing, fountains of jism. That's my line. Because that's my embroidery. I mean, you can trace it back. You could, if you actually watch the thing closely, there are certain people tell the joke a certain way, and I think that's because we all heard it from George Carlin originally. Yeah. And we all do a variation on George Carlin's take on it. David Steinberg and a bunch of other people, and in that movie you can see, and I hear them when they're telling it. I go, "That's how I tell it." Yeah, but we all embroider. We all add little performance flourishes.
Incredible, Amelia. You're up to bat.
I also see that you're also on The Simpsons as well. They had the character.
On The Simpsons, season 11. Pokemon is the name of the episode.
Yeah, I love it.
Now they're on season 38.
Yes.
From the day I was on that show, I got calls from people I grew up with saying, "Oh my God, my kids think I'm so cool because I know you. They saw you on The Simpsons.
Your character was perfect. They did you perfect with the T-shirts, your hair, everything, your glasses.
They really did. And I went in and recorded it. I went in and I recorded it. And I had one line to record. And as I was leaving, Elizabeth Taylor was arriving. And she had one line to record as Maggie, the baby. It was Goo or something like that. And
it was hilarious.
I knew her. We did a lot of AIDS benefits together.
That's so funny.
But we when you did those things, when you do a guest shot, they send you a trunk of Simpsons merch, all this swag stuff that they're not going to sell. I mean, and we called and compared notes to see what we got. We both got Homer Simpson's bowling ball, which looks like it comes in a bag. The bag is priceless. The ball is egg yolk yellow and kind of like filmy and has no holes. It has 3 red dots with a magic marker thing saying "drill holes here."
Oh my God!
And it's now the bitter assistant keeps saying, "Oh, this is the eBay item. This will see you through your old age when you sell this."
Yes, even on the Simpsons game. Also,
you never know. Warhol, 195 million for that Maryland. I may be sitting on an egg yolk gold mine here.
Well, even on the Simpsons game, you're a little character there too, but you have to have like so many donuts just to even buy you. So I'm not there yet.
I gotta get the game
I'm not there yet.
How do you know this shit?
I played this game.
That's amazing. But there've been 20 years of other people since I did. That's amazing.
Yes, I still haven't gotten there yet. I still have to collect a lot of donuts to get you.
Amelia, how did you know this stuff?
You have to make a call to Mr. Burns and see where they are.
Oh my God!
I play the Simpsons game, and he's a little character on there. You have to get so many donuts just to get by him.
This is what you do with your time?
Yeah, kind of.
Bruce Vilanch.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to get his little character on the game. Yes, God. I have to.
Now I'll sleep with myself.
Under yourself, woman. Jeez.
Hey, he's a popular person on the game. I have to get him on the game.
Apparently, yeah. I had no idea.
Yes.
Wow.
Crazy.
Me either.
Let's talk about. We had a guy on the show last night, Bruce, a film director, just did a film with Michael Paré and Eric Roberts. He's a God-fearing Christian guy, but he writes horror. He writes deep, dark horror.
Yes.
Here's
so much of horror is religious.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Right?
And
you'd like to have a piece of The Exorcist, I can tell you that.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's my question. I asked him, where does your mind go to have to write that stuff, right? And he gave us, the answer he gave us. Here's the question I have for you. You're an Emmy Award-winning writer. You've written, and I have just a partial list. I want people to take a look at this.
Mm-hmm.
This is a partial list, just a partial list.
Good Lord,
Bruce
it looks like the back of somebody's album with the lyrics.
Here's my question. Where does your mind have to go to come up with this stuff? Like, you've written a lot.
It goes
you're regarded as a genius. People regard you as a genius and funny and poignant and no filter. And we're going to talk about that tonight too. But you've got everything here from Hairspray to the Academy Awards to something that I'm fascinated. I'm looking at it right now. It was called where was it? It was, hold on, I want to make sure I get this because it's funny stuff. Yeah, it is, and I want to make sure that I get it. Here it is. Oh, here it is. Here we go. It is called, and I want to know. It was a Oh God, where was it? Hell, damn.
I'm just on pins and needles.
Yes, it is. Here we go.
Which I kind of enjoy being on, but I won't go into that.
Fucking with the stars. Here it is. Fucking with the
stars. Oh my God! Yeah. I won an award for that. I like that.
I know. It's a non-sexual role, however.
It's a gay porn, and it was me and Shishi LaRue, who directs a drag queen who directs a lot of gay porn, and Coco Lachine, who's a drag queen who I guess is in. I don't know if she's in gay porn or not, but we were the judges. It was Dancing with the Stars, and we were supposed to be judging these various pornographic scenes that we saw. But of course, we didn't see any of them. We went into a studio for an hour, and we shot reactions that said, "Now in this scene, this happens." And they said, "Oh, okay, fine," and we made up stuff as we went along. And it was interspersed with the actual porno, which we never got to see, and I still haven't actually seen it. But it was nominated for an award, and I was nominated for Best Non-Sexual Performance.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Grammy Awards, which are a gay porn award show out of Chicago.
I saw that. I gotta ask him about it.
I lost. I forget who actually beat me. You should pardon the expression, but but I don't have that particular lucite on my shelf.
Amelia, one of your favorite segments of the show is coming up.
Yes, yay!
But before we do that, got a word from our sponsors. Bruce, hang on, watch it. Amelia, close your ears, Amelia. Do you have sweaty balls or volleyball netty balls? It's time to make them ready balls. The Manscaped.com Lawnmower 3.0 will do the job and clean your knob with its patented no-nick head, so your head will function as desired. Enter promo code Wrestling Future for a generous 20% discount. That's enter Wrestling Future for a 20% discount. Manscaped.com and Wrestling with the Future, going balls to the walls with Manscaped.com. And the Lawnmower 3.0, your balls will thank you. And so will we. Okay, Amelia, it's safe.
It's safe now?
It's safe now. Your favorite segment of the show, Amelia, Show and Tell.
Yay!
Bruce, this is a segment we do here called Show and Tell. We're gonna walk through some photos and tell us what was going on here.
I think I was being goosed. A happy smile. Oh, that's the Oscars. There's Oscar.
Yeah.
There he is.
Okay.
And, this was a
Let's
show
talk about
my one-man show off Broadway I did about 20 years ago. But obviously before Hairspray, because I still had the beard.
Yeah. Let's talk about these T-shirts of yours. You have one hell of a T-shirt collection.
A lot. Well, when you have boobs like these, you got to show them off. That's my mother. That is my mother, Henny Vilanch, and that is, I think, opening night of Hairspray on Broadway.
Got it. Okay.
I forget what T-shirt I'm wearing there.
Beautiful picture.
She was a showgirl. She was fabulous.
Oh,
she was
beautiful.
Yeah. And you look dashing in that picture, by the way.
I love it.
Very well.
Nobody knows I'm a showgirl.
Gorgeous at the end. She's a beauty queen at the end of the show. This is what I was not nearly as blonde, but I know who I'm standing next to. It could be anybody.
Yeah.
This is obviously a winter shot. Oh, it's Toronto. I remember it's Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, which was a musical that Bet produced. One of the two producers.
This is one of my favorites.
Wiener Heaven.
Uncle Woody's Wiener Heaven.
Uncle Woody's Wiener Heaven. And I have a brother named Woody. Who, for my birth family, I was adopted when I was 4 days old. But I've recently found my birth family, and his name is Woody.
That's amazing.
Pause, LA. That's a nice charity. Yeah. I mean, the shirt's going to say it all.
Have you tried donuts?
Amelia has
carpet attire. My pen is huge.
I love that shirt, by the way. I love that.
On behalf of writers everywhere. Mellow birds.
Fabulous.
Not angry birds, mellow birds.
Mellow birds.
Exactly.
They're right. They're baked. God hates fags. Everybody dance. This was that.
Everybody on the dance floor.
that lunatic. That was very fat. That lunatic from Kansas. Fred
I
Feld.
love this. Amazing stuff.
Yes, there I am. Yes, with a. Oh wow, I was gigantic. That's.
Where was this photo taken?
It was on some red carpet, and it's a fabulous angle. It was my audition for Jabba the Hutt, which I hope to get in the Star Wars thing. But they cast an actual.
I don't remember. I don't ever remember you being that. I followed your career pretty good.
No, I was that. This was that's Marissa Jarwin-Oker, who played my daughter in Hairspray, and that is my post-performance haircut. I was very large after Hairspray because I kept eating like I was doing 8 shows a week, and I wasn't. And eventually, I had to have a belt, put in. And
you did a lot of red carpet shoots.
I do a lot of to show up.
I love that shirt, by the way. Can you see that, Amelia?
Well, it's Ann B. Davis, who played Alice on the Brady Bunch, and I wrote the Brady Bunch Variety Hour. And there's poor Alice in Chains.
I love that shirt.
But she has a band named after her, so that's good. Creature from the Black Lagoon was an early movie that I saw as a kid, and I just love the T-shirt. There's Franco. But am I actually standing next to him? I guess maybe I am.
Yes, sure was. And I wanted to talk about this because one of the headlines we pulled was Bruce Vilanch criticizes James Franco's Oscar hosting. Franco feels betrayed. Whose side are you on? Talk to us about what happened here, because it did make some news.
Oh, it was very brief, but well, he bombed on the Oscars, and then I was actually on the red carpet for Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and they asked him what I thought. I said, well, he was out of his comfort zone, and he brought in some writers who didn't do him any favors. We had to rewrite a lot of the stuff, and then that got picked up by the Vulture in New York Magazine, and I got. Then they went to him for a quote, and he said, "Oh my God!" He said he made some kind of a joke, and I think he was stoned or loaded, and he had a picture and he drew stuff on it, and then he apologized. The next day, he apologized, and then about a few months after that, he fired his manager, and his manager was up on embezzling charges and all that, and he wrote me a letter.
Oh my goodness!
Saying that how he'd been in a really bad place, and he was sorry that he did all that. That he thought I was a good guy, and We had joked. He loves to play these characters. He said he wanted to. He had just played when we did the Oscars. He played Allen Ginsberg. Allen Ginsberg, the hippie, the beatnik poet from Paterson, New Jersey, who worked in my father's office, and my father and his father were very friendly. Louis Ginsberg, the math teacher. Anyway, he had played Allen Ginsberg in a movie, and he said, "Now I want to play you." So I was telling him about Allen Ginsberg, and he said, "I want to play you in a movie." And it's been a running gag. I mean, I haven't seen him lately, but because he was kind of like semi-canceled, and now he's working his way back.
Yeah, talk to me about this book. I didn't know that such a book existed.
A book. Well, when I was on Hollywood Squares, when you're on television every night, they come to you with book offers because you're a famous person. So I didn't have a book that I could write at the time. But I had a collection of articles I'd written for magazines from as diverse as Playboy and The Advocate and a bunch of, and so they published this collection.
Oh,
and it was the best for a couple of weeks because I was on TV every night.
Sure.
And now it's a collector's item, which means you have to spend real money on eBay, or you'll find it in the bin at a subway station on 14th Street.
Now you wrote the foreword for this book.
I did. Thanks to Caro. Yes. It's a great book. It's really kind of a compendium of drag, and since I worked for every drag queen at the time, I worked for every drag queen pre-RuPaul, and then I worked on RuPaul's Drag Race many times. So, as a comedy mentor, as a judge, as all of these, once a Santa Claus. So I very well versed in the demi-monde.
Yeah, Amelia.
That's not an actress's name. That's
back to you.
Right. Yeah, I see that you did a lot of charity work too. That's wonderful that you helped a lot of charities for the LGBT communities.
When you grow up Jewish, you're taught that everybody hates you. No one's going to help you. You have to do it for yourself.
Absolutely.
And it's become. I kept saying it's a good motto for the gay community, which is my other minority, and the fat people is my third minority. But I've always found that you have to take care of your own, and that's where the charity sprang from. My parents were very philanthropic types. My father was a big pro bono doctor for the old senior Jewish community in Jersey, and my mother was very active in a lot of different organizations. So I grew up surrounded by that, as well as show business. That kind of example.
Oh yes, absolutely. That's how I raised my kids too, because my grandparents, my mom's side of the family were the same way. Growing up Hispanic, my grandfather was a mechanic, and my grandmother was a homemaker, and he did the same thing. He would do the pro bono, a lot of mechanic work, and my grandmother always made sure she had plenty of food, so whoever came by, they always had food on the table for everybody, whoever wanted to come by, so that you pay it forward exactly. And that's what I love about that. And you always did that, and I see that you always contributed to that.
Bruce, how hard is it to be funny today?
It's very, very difficult because everybody is so fucking sensitive.
Yeah.
Anything you say, as I say, as a card-carrying member of several minorities, I get it. I get when they make fun of my minorities, but we also have to have a sense of humor. The problem is now everybody is so serious about this that there are massive repercussions. It used to just be, well, get over it. It's a show. Change the channel, whatever. But now, no, that's not enough. They want you to never work again. They want you to be homeless in a tent with no revenue stream. They won't be happy until that happens. The good news is that there's pushback on all of it. And the people are saying, no, it's time to be reasonable. Yeah. And the accuser is not automatically to be believed. There's a thing called due process. And and even when you tell a joke, it's kind of like, this doesn't make you Hitler because you told a joke.
Right.
So it's, everything has to be put in context. And because people are finally saying, there's woke and there's insomniac.
Yeah.
And it's good to be woke, but it's bad to be an insomniac.
Absolutely.
You have no sense of humor, and your sense of proportion and perspective goes out the window. So that I think we're beginning to see the curve of this thing happening.
I don't understand it. As somebody that I actually ran comedy clubs for a little while, I ran a chain of comedy clubs called Laugh Tracks. They're all closed now. Easy to see why. It
Yeah,
was,
really.
yeah, it
Well,
was just
I think
crazy.
a lot of that in the '80s, comedians were superstars, and
Oh my
so
God, it was
I mean,
crazy, wasn't it?
people like Jerry Seinfeld and Roseanne and Ray Romano and Tim Allen became gigantic, wealthy people because
Oh,
they did their
huge.
act. They turned their acts into TV series, so it attracted a lot of people who really weren't very funny. But
Mhm.
also, a lot of people said, "Oh, this is much cheaper than running a music venue. You put a music stand with a stool and a bottle of water, and that's your expense."
Yeah, that's
So,
it.
so there were a lot of comedy clubs that in places where there shouldn't have been, in strip malls and stuff. And a lot of the talent that was there wasn't very good. And after a while, it just
Hmm.
became its own worst enemy. And it got over.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Now, now it's like, well, then COVID, years later, COVID
Mhm.
happened, but now I mean, who would want to go into a situation now, especially where all of a sudden your audience feels they can go up on stage and pimp slap anybody they don't like.
Well, I'll tell you what, I saw something happen. It was frightening that it happened. I saw a guy on stage take a guitar and waffle a
Oh my
heckler in
gosh.
the front row. I mean, he smashed him clean over the head with this guitar.
Well, that's different. That's that's a
That's
performance,
assault with a
not
deadly
the
weapon.
audience assaulting the performance.
Wow.
It's
Oh
it's
my goodness.
it's apples and oranges, Angelo. I don't know how to put.
Well, I mean, if you're not gonna want to be made fun of, don't sit in the front row.
Well, no, I mean,
Well,
Right?
but hey, Gallagher used to give out tarts to
oh
people.
Yeah.
my
Say,
God, I love
"Just
Yes.
sit up
Gallagher.
close, you're going
Oh
to get
yes.
wet. People,
Yeah.
don't come at me with your dry cleaning bill after the
Yes.
show. Here's a tart. Cover your ass.
Yes.
You're going to
One
get
of the
wet."
things that Mark Sodkin and I talked about on the last show was the difference between funny and funny.
Mhm.
That line comes from my favorite year, a film that one of my favorite films.
I love that movie.
Yeah, Bill Macy's character says to Benji Stone, it's not that it wasn't funny, it's just that it wasn't funny. So,
Hmm.
my question to you, B, is what is the difference between funny and funny?
Well, I don't know. I mean, no one's defined this, and I think that in I don't know if he put it in another context. Norman Steinberg wrote that movie, and I don't know if Norman put it if there was a follow up remark that explained it, or if it's just that one non sequitur. But I would
Yeah.
say that when a lot of people who are in the comedy business are sitting in an audience watching, and somebody does something funny, they go funny. They don't
Well,
laugh. They say funny. But when something is really makes them laugh, that's
yeah.
funny. But
Mhm.
and I said before about Gilbert. Gilbert was funny, and he didn't have to do anything necessarily. I mean, his whole demeanor was funny. Um, B. Arthur never didn't need a line of dialogue. Somebody
No.
would say something, and she would give you the reaction,
Yeah, the
and get a
look.
gigantic
Mhm.
laugh because you knew whatever she said was going to be killer. And
Yes.
sometimes it wasn't killer. And Mark, wrote a lot of that for her on Golden Girls.
Yeah.
Sometimes it wasn't necessarily killer. It didn't matter because it was funny because she was funny. So maybe
Bruce, when
that
you're writing,
explains it a bit.
when you're writing, Bruce, do you know instinctively what's funny to you, and can you be um, independently critical of your work?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I know what's funny to me. I know what I think is funny, and then I can also be critical and say, yeah, that's not as good as it could be. But you never know what the audience reaction is going to be. I mean, you can
Hmm.
kind of guess that you're going to have that there's going to be a laugh there, and
Yeah.
a lot of the times you're right, but sometimes you're wrong, and you just kind of look at each other and go, "Well, we thought it would work,"
Is
But
there anything
generally,
that's ever
you don't go with stuff that's like that if you don't have to. I
well?
mean, you try
That
and
that
get rid of the marginal stuff, but
yeah.
sometimes you're wrong.
That's another great segue. Do you ever reach a place where you say to yourself, "I can't go there," or "I won't go there"? Is there ever something that's like off limits?
Pardon me. Yeah. Holocaust jokes are off limits, I think. I mean, there's no way. I mean, jokes made by Holocaust survivors are funny, but you have to put them in context. And generally, if you said, did anybody die? Did people die? I mean, I guess, you can make jokes about the Titanic. It was 100 years ago, and people did die. But it depends on the joke that you're making about it. So those are always kind of, and you realize you probably can't go that far. I mean, as I said earlier, if somebody had said to Chris Rock, Jada lost her hair because of a disease, he probably wouldn't have remarked on it.
Well, that's something to think about.
What would it get him?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if he knew it was going to get him a bad reaction, why would he bother? Why would he do that? Especially on the Academy Awards. That's many people are watching, and it lives with you
that's the
forever.
$1 million question for sure. Is there there's always been this kind of I don't know whether it's a link, whether it's an inextricable link, but the tie-in from tragedy to comedy. They say that great tragedy breeds great comedy.
Yes, I've heard that.
And so let's take that as the premise. Why? What is it about tragic situations that are innately funny?
Well, it depends on what they are. As I said earlier, the definition of comedy has been tragedy plus time. You can, if enough time has gone by, you can look at it and you can see the humor in a situation.
Is that
not
really
in
the
every
secret
situation, but I think in a general way. I mean, slipping on a banana peel is probably the classic example. When it actually happens to somebody,
sure.
if it's the more pompous the person is, the more full of themselves, and their fall is funny because you are rooting for them to fall. Now, if they fall and break a hip, it's not so funny.
Yeah, true.
And in none of those movies that any of the silent comics did was anybody actually hurt in any of those situations.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm a big silent film, collector. I have a bunch of them. Chaplin and Harold Lloyd and oh my God, Fatty Arbuckle, guys like that. It's hard to imagine them not hurting themselves.
Well,
particularly, Fatty Arbuckle and Harold Lloyd, because that crazy bastard did his own stunts back in the day.
Listen, MTV has a show called Ridiculousness where they show people wiping out, and I don't get they got hurt, and they don't even bother anymore to say, but he was okay.
Yeah,
because nobody will believe that, and they kind of can't. The reaction isn't so much a laugh as there's like a shock. It depends on how bad the situation is. I mean, for America's Home Video, it was always like the biggest laugh was somebody getting hit in the nuts.
Yeah.
Now it hurts, but they'll recover.
Just you saying you're hitting the nuts has got to laugh out of me because I think it's fucking hilarious. Funny.
That was always. Right? And people fainting at weddings. That was their other big deal.
Oh my God, yeah. Amelia, I'll tell you what, kid. I'm going to, because you wanted Bruce on the show so badly and you got him, I am going to let you get the last questions in, then we'll say goodnight to Mr. Vilanch.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Bruce, when we say goodbye to you, just don't go anywhere. Hang in there. All right?
Okay. Yes, please. Your biggest accomplishments. What was the best show you've written?
Oh my God, I don't know. I never think that way. I mean, I used to be an interviewer, and I used to ask that question. And I realized nobody thinks that way. I mean, I did 25 Oscar shows. We won Emmys for them. So I did, but I don't know what I'd qualify as the best. To tell you the absolute God's honest truth, I don't know.
Because you know why? Because you've written them all. They're all the best. Everything you've written.
There you go. All right, Amelia. Hey.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Tiny Tim's manager and agent, Tiny Tim, the late Tiny Tim's manager and agent, is in our chat room right now. Stephen Plim. And there he says, Angelo Beth, I had them all. I know you did, Mr. Plim. But okay, so go ahead, Amelia.
Oh, I was just gonna say thank you for coming on the show. It was a pleasure for you to be here, and I actually would love for you to be on the show again soon if you have time.
All right, I'm around. You know,
absolutely, because I'd like to talk to you more about the shirts. Because there's one that I love that you said "Patience with a battery." It has one little bar on it.
Oh, no, this is
I need
unicorn.
that one.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I have that. Yes,
exactly. I like
needed
the
that
one that says
today.
"I slept with your son." I didn't show that one tonight. He's got one that says "I slept with your son."
I like the one that says.
Oh, I forget where I wore that. I forget where it was. It was someplace appropriate.
The one that says "I'm lost, take me home with you." I like that.
Could have been like a P flag rally or something.
Funny. Well, I'll tell you what, Bruce. Why don't you tell everybody where they can reach you on your social media?
You can read wegotbruce.com, which is a fan site that a guy I know runs, and he knows what I'm doing before I know. I mean, I go there to find out where I am. And if you're in Wilmington, Delaware, in September, I wrote a musical with Dolly Parton, which we're premiering at the Delaware Theater Company, called "Here You Come Again," and it's
20
it'll
minutes.
be the world premiere. We're going to see how it works. It's all using all of her catalog songs.
I'll tell you what. Put my name on the guest list. I'll be there. I'm 20 minutes from that facility.
Well, you are, of course.
I am.
Great. Yeah, they drew up a lot from Cherry Hill and that.
Yeah.
The suburban Philly thing. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, for sure.
The Bidens are subscribers, so we're hoping they'll show up on one of their weekends. You know, when they get fed up with training the dog.
Amelia, where can people reach you, young lady?
Or we're on Instagram on What's the Buzz, or Amelia Valerio Chapman on Facebook, or here with you on Tuesdays and Thursday nights, or Amelia AAChap70@gmail.com.
So let me see. I think I put that up on the screen for you here. Here it is. Hot damn. The Pitbull. And you can reach me at Mad Dog DeCipio on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We are on right now. Thank you to our sponsor, Manscaped. And soon a major beverage is joining us. And thank you. We are on 317 podcast platforms globally. I am blown away by the support our fans and friends have given us, and our sponsors have been nothing but gold. I love these guys at Manscaped. So join us each and every week. We are tomorrow. Oh, we got to tell everybody, Amelia, tomorrow night, a double header. We've got Country Music Hall of Famer Lacey J. Dalton, along with a 1986 Female Vocalist of the Year, Sylvia Hutton, both joining us tomorrow night. We are saluting the ladies of country music. And join us next week. Mary Murphy from So You Think You Can Dance will be with us. And keep your fingers crossed. We are just a phone call away from getting Michael Paré and Eric Roberts on the show. So Ed McKeever, bring me home, baby. Bring me home. We want Eric Roberts and Michael on the show for sure. Mm-hmm. So, in the meantime, be good to each other. Take care, everybody. And remember, it's always about what's the buzz.
What's the buzz?